Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Black Mental Health Matters. Today we have Dr. Cloud on as our guest. Dr. Cloud is a social worker for the Mecklenburg County, and he provides group and individual counseling for incarcerated youth and community. He has been working in the social work field for over 8 years, and during this time has served in various capacities, including outpatient mental health, adult and juvenile correctional facilities, HIV treatment centers, and the school programs serving grades K to 12. Dr. Cloud acquired his BSW from the North Carolina Central University, located in Durham, North Carolina. He acquired his master's from Howard University in Washington, D.C., and has a doctorate from the University of Kentucky. Dr. Cloud areas of interest are African American males, the LGBTQ community of color, and children and family, as well as women of color. Dr. McLeod, welcome to today's program.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, everybody.
Now, we're talking about men's mental health, and I want you to just give me a brief description of what that looks like for you as a person who works with young men, I suppose.
So, man, mental health, what it looks like to me is non-existent. And the reason I say that is because a lot of black men or men in general have mental health issues, but they never seek
Mhm.
they never seek the treatment that they need for it. So it looks non-existent because we love to sweep it under the rug that men can have mental health issues, but because we have that stigmatization behind it, we choose not to look at it.
Okay, thank you so much. My first question today is, what is the relevance of raising the awareness of Black men's mental health?
So I think I guess the reasoning or why we need to raise awareness about Black men's mental health, again, is we have stigmatization. So when we have stigmatization around mental health, especially for Black men, it kind of makes them harder to treat. It makes them afraid to even come in for treatment. It makes them come in for evaluation. It makes them afraid just to come in and be seen by anybody for any type of therapy. Additionally, the issue rises is that we end up having behavior issues and suicidal ideation issues, criminal issues. I mean, the list can go on and on. But what we see a lot of is that when we have untreated mental health in Black men, we are seeing a lot of increase in either suicidal ideation, depressive episodes, or we're seeing criminal episodes. A lot of the time, most Black men who commit some type of crime usually have a mental health disorder along with it.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that a lot of the issues facing Black men have to do with stigmatization. I heard you mention the word crime, um, and this is why we should raise awareness.
Yes.
So, are you saying that Black men are more at risk of mental health problems because of these issues?
Yeah, so African American males have a 5 to 10% higher mental health crisis than their other counterparts. Caucasian, Native American, Latino, African American men kind of take the lead there when it comes to mental health issues, only because they are not given the same tools as their other counterparts to treat their mental health or to even get their mental health assessed. Again, we're looking back again at stigmatization. So what I mean by that is we're looking at the stigma that's been associated in the Black community with our Black.
Understand? So, identify some of the factors that impact or influence mental health in the Black community, apart from the stigma and crime. What are some of the other factors that would have impacted on mental health?
So some of the other factors that kind of impact mental health for Black men outside of crime, outside of stigmatization, we're looking at socioeconomic background. So depending on how you were raised, where you were raised at, we're looking at the Black church. A lot of people don't understand that the Black church is also a big issue with African American males and their mental health. We're looking at sexuality as well as another component. We're looking at, those who have been closeted or those who have been told to, man up, as I think is our favorite phrase for our Black boys and men. And so when we're telling the men up, we're basically telling them to not act soft, to not express your emotions, to kind of, be a man. But that's also more harm than we realize. And we're telling our Black boys and our Black men that as well. And we're also looking at, oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, and we're also looking at things such as, if you're able to work, right? People don't understand that employment makes a big part of a man as well. So if a man can't get a job, and I always laugh when people say if a man don't work, he don't eat. But if a man can't get a job, we kind of talk down on him because we consider him to be poor or less than because he's not working to provide. And that goes back into social norms that we choose not to change for Black men. We give every other race, a kind of pass when it comes to white males, Latino males, and Native American males, but Black men, you have to provide, but sometimes that's not how it actually has to go.
Well, what you're saying is also true here in the Caribbean that boys from a very early age, after a certain age, you're not supposed to cry, you're not supposed to show emotions that can be linked to being feminine. And therefore, I think that that may also contribute to high levels of mental illness in Black men. So I'm in agreement with you that not being able to show emotions sometimes and the socio-economic challenges contribute to mental health. My next question is, and I'm going to ask this from my perspective because in Barbados, and this is based on statistics collected by the World Health Organization, that we have a higher percentage of males displaying mental health issues than females. Would you say that this is about the same in your location, that men outnumber women regarding mental health issues?
I will say that it is the same statistics only because when females display mental health issues, they're quicker to get help. They're quicker to get assessed. They're quicker to go to therapy. For instance, I can't have a baby. Females can have children, but we all know that when a female has a baby, she goes through what we call postpartum depression. And what happens is they're able to get help for that female during that time period to make sure that her depression is treated. Black men don't have that same thing. Just trying to use it as a good example of it is hard for Black men because we're not given the same services regardless of what we're going through, we're not usually given the same treatment because people believe that we can take care of everything, so we don't really need the help.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that there are not services being provided for Black males in the same way that females have services.
Yes, they're not.
Why do you think that is?
Again, if we take out stigmatization, if we take out socioeconomic background, if we take out education, it's because people do not want to treat Black males. If we look at the history of our African American males and how they have been treated, they've always been treated as the lesser than, or they've always been treated as being the strong one out of the family. When we look back historically, it's always been the man take care of the house, the man provide the bills, the man provides this. What do you need? You don't need anything. Your job, only thing your job is to be a provider. That's all you're supposed to be as a provider. You don't need to show us any emotion. All we need to know is that that you're here. We don't really need anything else. And that's the reason why treatment not being provided because that stigma is still attached. That Black men are when you see a Black man, he's this strong person, or he's this, the person who can just take care of himself. When most time, most Black men are actually calling out for help, and then when they commit suicide or when they get incarcerated, and then We find out it's behind mental health issues. And now we're depressed and we're sad because in our head, oh well, we didn't know he was depressed when the whole time he was calling out for help. We chose to ignore it because he's a black male.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the Caribbean experience because this is where I'm living. I am living in Barbados, so I'm going to bring this back to the Caribbean experience. And within the Caribbean, Black women here are taking up positions of power and educating themselves in societies that were once predominantly patriarchal. Would you say that these successes of women contribute to the Black male's sense of worth, whereby it leads to mental illness?
Yes. So I can agree that that does happen as well. And the reason I say that is because men are used to female, being underneath them and they're always being the leaders. And so, especially black men. And so the difference is as society shifts, we see that more, women of any race are starting to take more leadership roles, more direct positions than their male counterparts. And so it leads to what I call an inferiority complex in most of our men. And so when we have that inferiority complex, we believe that we're lesser than because we're not the one leading.
What about female sexual freedoms in the modern era? Do you think that this too plays a part in the well-being of the male mental state?
I'm gonna say yes and no. And let me tell you why I say yes and I say no. And the reason I say yes is because depending on how you were raised, most men believe that a woman is to be seen and never heard in her positions in the kitchen. I'm also going to say no because some men believe, some men like those type of women that are free, that can express themselves, that know exactly who they are and what they want to be, and they encourage that behavior. So I think it all depends on, social economic background, how you were raised, and exactly what exactly you're looking for in a female partner. And so I think it can it's a yes and no situation, but they may not always get a call for the situation later down the line.
Well, thank you for answering that question. And that's a very fair way of looking at it. One of my other questions is this: is it possible that some Black males are suffering from the single mom syndrome? And by this, I mean being raised in a home with a strong, dominant female, not having that male presence of any kind. Can this impact on the male's mental health state?
So yes, it actually can, and I can tell you that because when we look at, I call it the mama's boy syndrome, right? My mama did this for me. My mom has did this for me. My mama always been there. If I need it, I can call my mama. And so a lot of our African American females and they enable, our black males, so they don't sometimes they don't have to worry. Like, oh, my mama take care of me, I can live with my mama, I don't need to do anything. And that's actually more harmful than we realize because it leads to this kind of dependency or this codependency on their mother. And so then when they lose their mom or they lose their relationship with their mother, they start trying to seek it in an intimate partner or in their friendships. And when they're not getting that codependency or their dependency that they're used to, it kind of does lead to depression, anger, and these other behavioral health issues starting to form as well because they're kind of been uprooted is what I call it because they've been uprooted from somebody who takes care of them their entire lives to I either got to take care of myself or I can find somebody to take care of me like my mama did, and it causes an issue like that online. And it also
So you're,
oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was saying, so you're saying that how a child is raised can be linked to mental health issues. I mean, as a mother, I would think that, taking care of my son, I'm doing a good job. I'm making sure he's provided for, he has everything, even in some cases where he's an adult. And I say, you know what, don't go to right, just stay home and, mama has your back. So you're saying that this kind of behavior coming from the female can impact on a man's mental state, even though from where I'm sitting as a mother, you're taking care of your child. So you're saying that that kind of love creates mental health issues down the road?
So yes and no. And so let me tell you why again. And this is a yes and no answer. Yes, it can, but it depends again on socioeconomic background. It depends on how you're raising your son. So if you're raising your son, and I always dislike when I hear black mothers say this to their to their son, you're the man of the household. It's up to you to provide for the household. It's up to you to protect me and your sister if something go wrong. Then yes, because it leads to this complex that, well, I'm the man of the household, so you need to do as I say. So you're telling your only son that he needs to fill the role of a father that he does not have, or the man or husband that you do not have, and it does cause an issue later down the line. I'm also going to say no, because it depends again on how you're raising your son. I come from a household of all women. My mother, my grandmother, my aunts raised me as one of the few black men, and I think I turned out pretty well, as my mom likes to say. But my mom didn't raise me to be the man in the household. She didn't raise me to take care of bills. She didn't see what she raised for me. What she raised me is to be an independent person who's able to think on his own and do everything on his own. And if I need mom, I can call mom. But I'm not codependent or dependent on my mother for everything to the point that I cannot function alone independently in my own settings. That's when we have to look at exactly how are we parenting our children, especially our black males. Are we parenting them to make them able to do stuff to function as individuals, or are we raising them that they're always going to be dependent on mom? And that is where the mental health piece can come into play.
Understood. That sounds very fair and very reasonable to say that it is how you raise a child, but it a lot depends on the mother's background as well. One of the things that has been coming up over the years for me is where you have artists like Jay-Z coming out and talking about their mental health issues. Would you say that they are in a position to influence more men to come out and talk about mental health issues?
I would say yes, and because a lot of our black males listen to Jay Z, if we look at Kanye or Yee, as he likes to call himself, or or we look at some of our basketball players who a lot of black men kind of admire, look up to, they have the power and influence to kind of influence mental health in the African American community, especially African American males, because people, I'm going to call mental health a trend, but what I know is that certain African American males, they always kind of follow after a rapper or some celebrity that they idolize. And so if Jay Z say that mental health treatment is cool, and you a diehard Jay Z fan, a lot of African American males want to be in therapy. Same thing for Kanye West. Same thing for Steph Curry, LeBron James. When we look at all of these celebrities who have kind of openly talked about their mental health and how they have navigated, we started to kind of see a slight increase in their fan base of black males who are getting mental health services.
What I like about the Jay Z story is that very often we tend to link happiness and success with having a lot of money. But here is a very successful black man, has it going on, but yet still he's dealing with his own mental health issues. And what I want to bring home is the fact that money does not solve your problems.
It doesn't.
Having that mental well-being is what it's about. Not having a lot of money, because as you can see with the Jay-Z situation, I'm wealthy, I have it going on, but I have these issues that's still plaguing me.
And that's very
And
important
yeah,
because we always think that if we have just a little bit more money, right? If we're able to do this, if we're able to do that, we'll be happy. But like you said, money can't buy you much. It can buy you comfort. It can buy you a few items, but it can't truly buy you happiness. And I always laugh when people say, if I can just have this much money, I bet you I'll be happy. No, no you won't, because you still got to deal with it, with that demon inside of you that you haven't yet to look at because you're afraid to.
so would you say that society's measuring stick for happiness and success can also contribute to mental health issues?
It surely can, because I want to be successful. I want to be happy, but at what cost, right? What do I have to sacrifice for this? And I think that's what we often don't look at, is that when we want to be happy, sometimes we can be happy with just the basic things in life. We can be successful because we worked our way up there. But some people don't understand that we sometimes also have to sacrifice for our happiness or to be successful. But what are you willing to sacrifice is the question. And your mental health is usually one of the things you choose to sacrifice to be successful, to be happy. You're telling yourself, well, if I don't deal with this person, right, I'll be successful. Or, if I don't express this type of emotion, I'll be happy. Or if I just kind of bury it down inside of me, I can pretend I can be happy, even though I'm really not happy. I'm just trying to pass as I am happy. You're sacrificing your mental health for slight comfort in that moment of time. Because eventually it's going to rear its head and come back around for a circle that you're going to have to deal with it.
Understand. One of the subjects that's very dear to me is spirituality. And earlier I heard you mention, religion and the church to some extent. Do you think that spiritual awareness and spiritual practices can help to bring about mental well-being?
Yes and no. And you guys you say yes and no for a few things.
No,
I
for the other questions, yes.
I was raised Southern Baptist by a Baptist grandma. So church was what I grew up in for most of my life. But what I've also learned as I got older is that church can either be harmful or it can be helpful. That has to do with spirituality as well. And the reason I say that is because most of the time, depending on where your church is or how you grew up in the church, your church may condemn you for certain things, right? Or your church may be there to actually help you heal through certain things. So it depends again on location, how you grew up, and exactly religion. Spirituality is big. I always tell people that any time that you don't know what to do, lean to God, and then as you lean to God, lean to a therapist because both of them can go hand in hand together. You can have religion and spirituality. You can also have a therapist. Don't just go to the church or go to spirituality thinking it's going to solve all your issues, or you're praying for God to heal your mental health issues when they say faith without work is dead. You haven't put the faith in. You prayed about it, but what you have to put the work into it as well. And what we see a lot is that a lot of people talk about church hurt. And church hurt is real. We choose not to talk about church hurt or how the church has hurt us. But when a lot of black men have been hurt by the church. Because they have these high expectations for us that when we don't meet them, we feel scorned, or we feel like we may be turned away, because or we may be condemned by God because we couldn't meet the expectations of the church. So that's why I would say yes and no. But I do think that the church can also help you in spiritual well being as well, and with your mental health as well.
I'm not sure that I quite understand how church can be harmful to one's well-being. Could you explore that a bit, share a bit more of that with me? In what ways can church be harmful to your mental state?
I'm sorry, Keith, I couldn't hear that last part.
In what ways can church be harmful to your mental state?
So, for instance, say if you are African American male, right, and you identify as LGBTQ, the church loves to condemn those who are same gender loving. You're going to hell. God doesn't love you. If you come to the church and in the church it says, come as you are, but I'm condemning you for who you are, do you think I'm going to feel safe in that space of holiness? Do you think I'm actually going to want to come to a place that I'm supposed to be in for a God who loves me when you, who are supposed to be, I guess, the mouthpiece of God, are condemning me for loving who I want to love? Or if I'm a woman who's not married with a child, that I'm not married to the father, but I had a baby, you're going to condemn me because my child is out of wedlock, right? Or we always love to preach these different pieces of the Bible because we love to take from them how we choose to. The Bible's interpretation. I always tell people, depending on the church, it can be harmful. Or we always preach these about LGBTQ, women out of wedlock, but we never preach everything else in Leviticus, right? Eating shellfish, getting tattoos. I have a lot of tattoos over my body. I always tell people I'm one of the social workers who's a millennial, and I have tattoos, but I'm also very religious. I said, so if God gonna condemn me for having these tattoos over my body, I'm always gonna finna eat my crab legs while I'm at it. We didn't want to just drive it home. So it can be harmful. because I'm coming to a place where I'm supposed to be myself, where I can be open, I'm supposed to be loved, but you condemn me for certain choices that have nothing to really do with you. And I'm just giving examples of that's how the church can be harmful. My husband is coming to me and he's beating me. You're telling me that to turn to God and to let my husband and to pray about it or come to marriage counseling. My husband is still beating me, but you want me to come, but you're telling me to stay with him, the person who's beating me, or my husband's committing adultery. I want a divorce, but you're telling me I can't divorce him because it goes against what's in the Bible. So now pretty much I'm stuck between my religion or my marriage, and I don't want to be condemned by God. So I need to stay in this relationship. And now I'm unhappy, but I still got my faith. But my mental health is deteriorating because my husband is out here cheating.
Well, that's
And
a
I know
very
you're
good
talking about, yeah.
explanation.
So those are some examples of how religion can be harmful to your mental health.
Repeat that last statement.
I said, so those are some examples of how mental health can mean religion and the church can be harmful to your mental health.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that judgment, being judged, is
Hmm.
one of those things that can affect a person's mental health.
Of
That
course.
judgment, okay. Especially if it's of a negative, coming from a negative place, then
Exactly.
it can be harmful to the person. But in saying all of that, I really want to delve into how does that really affect me if you judge me. I'm not really going to care one way or another if you think, well, okay, Sonia is not a nice person, or Sonia wears her hair in odd colors. That's not going to affect me. So how can judgment affect another person, really and truly? How can you have to accept that in order for it to really affect you? At least that's
So
my thinking.
yeah, that's your thing, but not everybody may think that way, right? And so we have to look at it from everybody's perspective. Some people may don't like being judged. They have this image that they want to, keep up or way they want to be perceived. And so when that is challenged, when that image is challenged, or when they are being judged, and they may not be able to take that in the way that we think. A lot of black men, especially if we're talking about black men and mental health, they have this image that they want to uphold that, I'm a provider. I'm a strong man. My masculinity is forefront and center. You gonna know I'm a manly man. I don't cry. I pop my son if he do this. But if we judge him for being anything less than that, his mental health deteriorates because now he has to rethink who is he, or what is that, or who exactly do he want to be, because now society has judged you. And so that's what I look at that. We have to look at different perspectives. For you, being judged may not be an issue, but we may not know how it may affect another person and their mental health. We don't know exactly what their childhood may have looked like, what their adolescent years may look like, and up into their adulthood. We don't know if being judged can trigger trauma from childhood and adolescence that was left untreated, and now we're having to deal with that.
What about inherited trauma? Because I think that as a person coming from I'm going to say Caribbean African person, that there is still that post slavery syndrome going on for a lot of us. Would you say that this is also an issue that affect black men? And I'm going to bring this from a historical perspective where
Hmm.
you watch your women being raped, you yourself may have been raped, and you've seen all these atrocities being carried out. I don't know if you believe in that far memory gene where memories are passed on through the genes, but if you do, you know that this can be a very real thing for a lot of us as black people, that we're carrying post slavery trauma.
So I agree with you there, and the reason I say that is that we do carry post-slavery trauma, and it does show in our black men. And so when we look at it, and this is from our perspective, because a lot of people's perspectives are different from mine. When we look at it, you will notice why a lot of our black men are very protective of black women, right? Or why a lot of black men are, they're big trying to be in the household now because they were taken from the household back then. back, doing, well, I always say back during slavery time, like I was there. I didn't live during slavery time, but during slavery time, they always, try to break the man down, right? Because a broken man was easier to control than one who still had willpower. And I think a lot of our black men still dealing with that too, that we don't want to be controlled. We want to have our own autonomy. We want to be able to think for ourselves. And I think that still is inside, inherited inside our DNA, that anytime that we feel like that we don't have control over our own autonomy, we don't have control over our own lives, that it does lead to some type of mental breakdown because we feel like somebody's trying to, what they call it, breaking the buck, because somebody's trying to take something from us. Because the one of my favorite quotes, I gotta remember the book, was the best way to break a Negro down is to break the man down. Because once you have broke the male down, you now control the family. And that comes from back in slavery, where if your family watches me and your friends watch me break you down, humiliate you, sexually assault you, or even threaten or whip you in public, you are now humiliated because you are now seen as less than a man. You know, or let me
Well,
watch
that
me.
brings us,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. No, I'm listening to you speak, and I'm thinking of the Willie Lynch letter, where he basically gave those instructions. If you can break the man down and build a woman up, you will continue with a form of slavery. You'll keep the black man oppressed for whenever, until we as a people decide enough is enough. Let us heal ourselves. Let us put programs in place to make sure that we can take care of our mental health issues, especially for the males. So, how are we going to bring that balance back into the black community where, one, we're going to take care of the males so that we don't have this high number of males with mental health issues? I mean, here in Barbados, as I said, you have 700 and some odd cases of mental health patients, and out of that, 500, over 500 are male, and the rest are females. How do we go about putting programs in place? Because it's not just the persons who are suffering from the mental health issues, but it is the family, it is the children of those people. How are we going to help them? What programs do you have in the USA to assist with the family of the person who has been diagnosed with a mental illness or who's showing symptoms of a mental illness?
So one thing that I have seen an increase of, and which I really love now, is we're seeing more of us in mental health, right? And so black men love to see another clinician of color, especially another black male. My juveniles, who are predominantly Latina and African American males, they love seeing me when I walk into a building because there's no other black male clinician. It was there were female clinicians, and then you had me, the sole black man in the office, and my juveniles would come to me all the time because they had that connection there, right? I guess I what you call the level one prevention, because I was somebody they can connect with. As Mecklenburg County, with my county that I work in now, as we started to implement different programs, we see a lot of family therapy for victims of those with mental health issues. We see a lot of, family therapy for those who have parents with mental health issues, or who have caregivers who have partners with mental health issues. And we're starting to see these new subgroups pop up more and more each day, because we're starting to realize that mental health is actually way more serious than we realize. And I think we have to thank COVID for this, because I think before COVID, nobody was really looking at exactly mental health and the complexity of mental health until we all were forced to be on lockdown with our significant others, with the men in our family, and we started to actually realize that actually may be a mental health issue going on. We need to get it treated, because COVID required us to actually have that one-on-one time. Because if you think about it, most of the time we're not in the house all day with our partners or with most of the African American males in our family. Because you got school, you got work, you're out doing something, and by the time you get home, you're probably together for 1 to 2 hours, which still isn't enough time to notice anything may be wrong. But when you're on quarantine, or you're in the house together, 6 to 8 hours a day, you start to actually pick up those little small, quirks that I thought were small quirks were actually something more serious. And so these programs are starting to pop up now where we're able to have these conversations with family members on how to deal with it. For example, one of my prior juveniles had a parent with a mental health issue. And so, what we were able to find out is that there's a program for children dealing with parents with mental health issues. And it's a program that teaches the children how to work with their parent. It gives them information on when your parent is experiencing this type of chaotic or manic episode, exactly, how to calm them down so they realize, so they don't harm themselves or harm you in the household. So these are the type of programs that we're starting to see. And these,
That's
interv-
excellent.
yeah,
That's
these
excellent.
interventions are working.
So I'm going to ask this. How are those programs being funded? Are they being funded through the government or through private institutions?
So some of these programs are being funded through the government. They're being funded through the county. It depends on exactly where the agency is located. Some are being funded through grassroots methods, and some of them just are being funded through certain, medical agencies. Like here, we have Nova and Atrium Health and Care My Health, and so they all are also funding their own different type of, I guess, therapeutic settings through their own funding as well. So it just depends if you go the hospital route, and I would tell people it's the hospital route or the county route, the funding for all of us predominantly comes from the government because the government is now starting to see that there's a rise in mental health, and so we need more mental health services.
Okay, I like that. And therefore, I'm going to come to my next question because I know that here in Barbados, our government allocates 10% of its health expenditure to mental health. And in some African countries, it's 1%, which goes to show that the bulk of the expenditure on health that goes to other health issues, but not enough on mental health issues. So I'm very glad that you say where we have programs that are being funded by government, that you're spending money on the mental health, because I'm a firm believer that if you have a country where people are mentally okay, they're emotionally okay, that you're going to have higher levels of productivity. You're going to see a reduction in crime. Um, Overall, see a country that is doing really well. At least that's my opinion. But if you can get the mental health thing working well, the mental and emotional health working well, you'll bring some stability to your country, more productivity, more of all the good things that you want for your country.
Yes, because I always tell people the United States is like that one person who you don't like, but you got to deal with. So that's how I look at it here because we're now taking care of mental health in the United States. Certain countries have already been well ahead of the ball. The United States, as she likes to regularly do, takes her time. We're gonna get there when we get there. And again, I think we have to think COVID because COVID has made us push ahead quicker than we realized for mental health services. I think if COVID never happened, we still kind of be a little bit far behind other countries with treating mental health or putting more mental health services into place.
That's really awesome to have that kind of support coming from government, because from where I stand, I think that it is one of those things that we talk about. We talk about mental health, but that's it. You know, if you ask what programs do you have in place, especially for young black men,
Hmm.
one, to get them off of addiction, because that's the first thing that most young men will do. They'll find something to ease the pain, so to speak.
Yes.
So
It
you
would.
have addiction either through drugs or alcohol.
Hmm.
Um, then these things lead to high levels of crime, and it is a sliding situation for young men because once you live on an island, it is very small,
Hmm.
and if you make mistakes, people don't let you forget those mistakes. So the recovery can be a bit of a challenge. I'm not giving you a job because you spent 6 months in prison.
Hmm.
You stole something from somebody last week, so we're not going to help you here. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people. And even if that is not conveyed, you can be made to feel like a criminal for your entire life, even when you make changes or steps to change.
Stigmatization. Yes, you're right. It's that stigmatization. Why am I still being held accountable for crimes that I myself have already paid for?
Yeah. And I heard someone say recently, I walk into a store and everyone is looking at me sideways because, I have a reputation, I have a reputation. And I think these are little things too that keep people from coming forward and talking about what they're going through. I feel down today, we don't want the stigma. We don't want to go through life with people side looking us just because. And I'm going to bring this back to the question about church and religion because I'm going to stand in agreement with you that they can contribute to your mental instability in that the expectations can be so high. And when you fall from grace, there is no graciousness coming from persons in these institutions. They
Yes.
grab you, they label you, and they ostracize you rather than give you the forgiveness of God. They say, well, you messed up. We don't want anything to do with you. And that presents a real challenge because I still believe, in spite of all of that, that these institutions, if practice, if they put the true practices into place, that of forgiveness, that of compassion, that they can reach more people. That's my opinion. They can reach more people. They can bring more people into that place of mental well-being. But there need to be some restructuring within these religious organizations where they accept people for who they are, especially persons from the LGBTQ community.
Hmm.
You can't have double standards where you talk about love, but then when it comes to practicing love, that's a total different kettle of fish. It's like we know what the book says, but this is how we are as people. And for me, mental well-being means that we go back to that place of diversity, inclusion,
Hmm.
and equality.
And you're totally correct on all of them because with black men, and I see this often, and and especially in therapy, it's that feeling of feeling wanted, right? If I have a safe space, and it's saying that this is your safe space, right? A lot of my friends who are African American males, I always tell them, this is a safe space, right? My home is a safe space. This is the place where you can come here and be yourself. You don't need to have this guard up. You don't need to be somebody else. This is that safe space. If you ever need to talk about anything and you feel like that, you may be judged, shoot me a call, FaceTime me because I'm not gonna judge you. I personally don't care what you decide to do, right? Because we're all human. But at no point should you be feeling that you're out here and that you're alone and that nobody's showing you grace, right? And I always tell people, extend a grace or have grace with yourself, or show grace because that goes a long way for your mental health when you know that somebody's just accepting you for yourself and what you're showing them is what they want to see.
That's so true. That is so true. I think, though, that what is needed is, as you say, especially in the Caribbean, safe places for males to come together, other than the rum shop, you know, other
But
than the rum shop.
that's a good place.
You think?
Let me tell you why that's a good place, and I'm gonna let you continue your thought. When you look at where black men gather at, whether it's the barbershop, the basketball court, the rum shop, those are actually safe spaces in a way because if you have ever been in a barbershop and a lot of black females say, I am not going to the barbershop with my son. I refuse to. Because in those barbershop, men are having some of the most transparent conversations. It may be so inappropriate to women, but men are being their true authentic selves. If you ever go in a barbershop and it's all men in there, they are having some of the most authentic conversations. And it may not just be about sports, it may be about women, it may be about sex. But those are some of their safe spaces because it's like this is my community. Ain't nobody gonna judge me. I go in the barbershop and I laugh because the candid conversations that we have in the barbershop is not the candid conversations I was used to growing up in the barbershop. So it has changed and shifted as I've gotten older. And that right there is one of the best things I've ever seen.
Well, I've been to barbershops, and you are correct. They do have these heart to heart conversations. I think as a female, when you're there, they try to downplay it a little. But you're correct. They do have these heart. But for me, if you're going to the rum shop, you're drinking.
When you drunk,
You
you
know,
tell me a true
you're
story.
gonna drown your sorrows in those drinks.
Yes.
And that comes straight out of the Bible, leave strong drink for those who have sorrow of the heart. And I think some men take that to heart, there's nothing else to do. So I'm going to hang out here. I'm going to drink as much as I can. I'm going to go home plastered,
Yeah,
pass out. And once I'm out, I'm out. I don't have to deal with the issues that confront me.
you're right. And that's also a coping mechanism when we talked about earlier how certain men may turn to certain substances or certain things to numb the pain. And you're right. Alcoholism is one of them.
So coming out of this, what I'm hearing is that we need more programs to support Black men in terms of getting them to come out and talk. You start with the conversation and find
Mhm.
ways in which to heal.
You do. And on top of that, you also have to allow men to be vulnerable. I think that's another thing we don't talk about is vulnerability in black men.
Well, masculinity and being masculine brings its challenges. Yeah, so
It
masculine
does.
is not just about having a six pack abs and big muscles. It's about your personality, who you are, how you feel, and do you want to see men cry? Because I remember for me, the very first time I saw a guy cry, I laughed. I
Oh,
I found it hilarious. This is
okay.
several years ago. It's like 30 years ago. I found it hilarious because a big man crying, they don't do that, So I thought it was hilarious.
And that's understandable because you're not. Again, we're not used to black men crying.
No, no, men don't cry. So it is only as you get older and you become more mature and you become aware that men do have emotions and that there's some men who are not so macho that they will show like you see them cry. Today, if a guy cries in front of me, I'm going to be very compassionate and allow him to cry, and try to assist wherever possible because men do cry. I remember years ago when I was studying and I had an essay to write on prostitution, and I decided, you know what, I'm going into the red light district and interview a sex worker. And this is one of the things that she said to me. People think that we're just here to sell sex, but we actually sometimes just listen to the complaints of some clients. That's all they want, someone to talk to tell their deepest, darkest secrets to. And I was amazed at that because, like most people, you have the impression these girls just come out to work in one specific area. But here's a woman saying, no, it goes beyond that.
Have
And
you
all
ever?
that, yeah, it goes beyond that.
Yeah.
So guys don't want to come and sit and talk to a therapist. Who wants to be seen coming out of a therapist's office to be labeled as crazy or something else? But guys find ways in which to deal with the situation. May not be professional, but I guess this is one way of dealing with the situation. You go pay somebody $3 for their time and you sit and talk.
And you're right. Sometimes all black men want is to talk, right? It's not always. I remember telling one of my colleagues, I said, if you ever had intercourse with a man and he's cried, that doesn't mean that the sex wasn't good or was bad. It's an emotional relief for him because he was probably carrying so much on him that you gave him a reprieve. You didn't require him to be nothing but himself during that intimate moment. And for his body, him crying was him saying it was him kind of giving up that emotional pressure that he probably been holding, right? Or I always tell people sometimes men are the biggest babies. I don't care how we spend this. We as men are the biggest babies. When I'm sick, I'm a baby. I want to be baby. Okay, let me lay on you, play on my hair.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything. Just let me be a big child because men also want to feel comforted. They want to feel wanted as well, right? And I always tell people that when black men cry, I think to me that's one of the most purest moments that they can share with you. Because as you said, black people are not used to a black man crying. So a black,
No, it
yeah,
is
it's not normal. And so if a
no.
black man cries with you or cries around you, he trusts you to the deepest of his core because nobody else probably is ever going to see him cry because he doesn't feel comfortable. But if he can cry around you, that man is very comfortable. I didn't believe in crying, and I used to stop myself from crying in every situation because I was like, I don't want nobody to see me cry. I think the first time I ever cried was in front of one of my close friends, and I was in undergrad. And I remember I was crying, and she was thrown off. She was like, "Wait, I've never seen him cry before." She's like, "I don't know what to do." Like she like, I don't know. She's like, "I don't know if I need to comfort him, hug him." Like he didn't know what to do in that moment. All my friends were shocked because they were like, "We've never seen him cry." And for me to cry because of what I was going through, it threw all of them off. And they didn't know what to do in that moment. It took them about a good couple of minutes to come around and hug me, but at that moment they were thrown off. But I was comfortable because they were my friends,
Hmm.
and we had been friends going on for years. We have been through a lot together. Death, breakups. Trying to stay in college during that time period. The freshman 50 because I definitely gained weight, but we were always together. So for them, me crying, the strongest person out of the group, was new to them.
So would you say that it is okay to encourage men to become emotional and shed tears no matter what, no matter where they are? Just let it out.
Yes, let it out. I don't care. Listen, I will cry now. I don't care what if I'm going through something emotional. And my mom knows this, because my mom probably watching this. So hey, mommy. But my mom knows this, and my grandmother knows this, and my friends. I will cry now. I will allow myself to cry. I don't care what I'm going through, because I used to bottle everything up as a child, as a teenager. If I was upset or if I was like having a very emotional day, I would bottle everything until it would get to the point where it would explode out in like angry outbursts, and it made my mom concerned because I wasn't properly expressing myself the way I should, and it wasn't natural because I didn't know how to express myself even. And I remember my mom made me go to counseling. Like she said, "You're going to therapy." She said, "I don't care." She
Oh.
said, "I don't know what's going on." She was like, "But you bottling up your emotions is not healthy." And I remember my therapist, it was a black female, and she said, "Why do you bottle up your emotions?" And I remember telling her, "Because nobody wants to listen to me. Who wants to listen to me? I'm a black guy. I'm not supposed to have emotions." And I think that's when I like clicked on that I can actually talk freely about what I'm going through. And I think that was one of the most therapeutic therapy sessions because it gave me this mindset that I don't have to bottle up anymore. So I'll cry now. I can cry. I can be listening to a gospel song that moves me. I'll be in here crying. I can be going through something and I'll cry because I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable. And I think that's what we have to allow. We have to allow our black men to be vulnerable, to express themselves, and we also have to allow them to kind of have again that safe space. Like let them be vulnerable in that moment. If a man comes to you and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this," okay, let's talk about it. Do you want to go somewhere? Do you want to sit down and eat and talk about it, or you tell me, whatever makes you comfortable, so you can feel comfortable to express what's going on. And you're going to see a major shift in his behavior after that, right? And I always because when I did my doctoral work, my research was black men need love too, right? That was the name of my research because I looked at exactly what happens when we don't address mental health in black men and also the emotional components behind it. And emotions played a big piece because men do not know how to properly express emotions. I seen my father cry for the first time in my 20 something years of life when I graduated from my doctoral program. I seen my dad cry, and my dad is this I guess you want to say, very masculine guy and stuff like that. But I've never seen my dad cry, and it made me cry because I've never seen my dad be that emotionally vulnerable before. It wasn't something that he was used to, so it threw me off and everybody else off because we never seen my dad cry.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it is okay for black men to become so emotional that they let the tears flow. It
Yes.
is okay for God to talk about their issues. Find someone they feel safe with and talk about their issues.
Yeah.
And that does not mean that they are in any way feminine, because I think that's a big issue too for a lot of men. I don't want to come across as being soft, so I'm not going to show um, my fears. I'm not going to let anything ruffle my feathers, so to speak. You know, there is this thin line between being feminine and being masculine, very thin line. And I think that if we can embrace all of who we are, you know, if women can embrace the fact that we have estrogen and we also have the male hormone thing going on, and we're balanced that way.
Mm-hmm.
We're balanced that way as human beings. So I think that if we can balance our hormones and recognize, look, I am neither he nor she, in that sense that I should hold on to my emotions. I know for me as a woman these days, you know, within recent times, I can hide behind my emotions. I don't want to cry.
Mm-hmm.
I see tears as a form of weakness. So I don't want to cry. I try not to cry. But if I watch a movie that is very, you know, wishy-washy movie with a lot of pain and suffering, I'll shed tears. But if something affects me, I hold on to those tears. I'm not going to show that weakness in the face of anyone as a black woman. So I know if I'm thinking that way as a woman, then there are males who are thinking that way. You know, I don't want to cry because that's a thing that women do, and it is a sign of weakness.
You hit it right on the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit it
So
right on the
I'm gonna put all this pain in a bottle, and if I can't cope with it, I'll drink that bottle with something stronger in it, or I'm going to go out and find something else. Maybe shoot it with some. What do you shoot it with? Heroin or cocaine? Whatever you do with drugs, you know. I'm
for
gonna find
hearing. So they
out this.
use yeah, hearing. You shoot up with hearing, cocaine. You use a you have to use a spoon. But
You
you're
have to
right.
use a spoon.
Yes,
Wow.
yeah, but you're completely correct because black men need that space, and you're right. Women can mask their emotions if they want to, and I kind of am glad that I was raised in a household where predominantly women, only because I was able to actually see that shift. I, I've seen my mom kind of hide her emotions sometimes, and I'm like, "Mom, what's wrong?" She's like, "Nothing," and I'm like, "I'm your son." So I mean, I'm kind of good at reading your emotions by now, so I know something's bothering her. Versus the men in my family, when we hide our emotions is you won't know because it's just this flat effect that they always give. It's like, oh, that's just regularly them. Something's going on, but we just think that's naturally them all the time.
Yeah, men can be very stoic. You can't read them as easily as you can read women.
Exactly.
You will have to be very close to that person to read the, you know, mood and feel their energy. But men can be very stoic and you don't know what is going on. And I think that is one of the major issues is that their expression can remain blank and they're going through a lot. They're stressed and they won't say anything until it becomes too much and then they blow up or they commit suicide or some craziness.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think with that one of the things I'm going to look at and I'm going to encourage is that we continue to raise the awareness of men, the black men's mental health. I think that is important. So, with that, are there any final words that you want to share with us?
I think that what I want to say, and I hope that people kind of take this in the best they can, is that if you have a black male in your life, right, what is a son, a brother, a husband, or a friend, whatever he is to you, always let him know that he's loved. Always reinforce that you are loved, and always reinforce that that you're a safe space for him, and that he has somebody he can come and talk to. Yeah, when a man wants to be vulnerable with you, let him. It doesn't mean that he's feminine. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with him. You can still be masculine and be soft. And I think that's something a lot of people have to learn is that it's okay to have a soft side, on top of your masculine side. It just means that you're very in tune with yourself as a person. And so you have to allow that man to do exactly that. If he wants to be the little spoon versus the big spoon, let him be that because it's comfort. Give him that comfort, give him that space to be vulnerable, to be transparent, to cry. Give him that space. And when he's ready, and you'll know when he's ready, just allow yourself to listen. Don't talk, but listen. Because sometimes that's all we want. We just want you to listen to us. You don't got to say nothing bad. Just let us kind of vent. And then, if we want you to tell us something, you will know when we want to hear something from you because we may need it. And it's not in a negative way. It's just saying that right now I just need to vent this off my head. And so I think those are my last words. Just to let men present themselves how they want to be presented and allow yourself to be that safe space for them when they present it to you. Don't force it, let it flow naturally. That is how you create, positive mental health changes.
But we can only get to that place if, I'm speaking for myself, if I, as a female, am open and willing to listen without passing judgment and saying, "Boy, you crying? You need something to cry for." You don't
Exactly.
cry.
That's it.
So you don't cry. What are you crying for? Men don't cry. Real men don't cry. You know, there was an attorney that my ex-husband would deal with who would wear pink, and I'd go into his office and I said, "What are you doing wearing pink? That's not her masculine color." And he would very proudly say, "Real men wear pink."
Exactly.
Yeah,
Real men cry.
yeah, real men wear pink. But I like what you've said in that we as women must learn how to be silent when a man is silent. It's not that he doesn't want to share, it's that sometimes he really doesn't know how to share. And I think too, when you're dealing with females, we love to talk and we will talk about everything. So if a man shares something that is sensitive, he doesn't want you running to your girlfriends and sharing, well, my partner told me XYZ is going on. He doesn't want his business out there with everyone. So if I'm hearing you correctly, a lot of responsibility lies on the female to assist men who are going through challenges rather than passing judgment, rather than nagging and I need to get this out of you now,
Mm-hmm.
to just hold space for that person.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that when they come to you that they're in a safe environment. And when a man confides in you, keep his confidence. It is not a story to be told to all the girlfriends at the club.
No, this is in the sanctity of privacy of our own home because you are the person I trust to know this information. This is not your mama, your best friend, your cousin, your grandma, and your girlfriends need to know. And now I'm getting looked at weird, so now I feel judged. So now I'm kind of digressing back into that space of being guarded with you. That's not what we want.
Yeah, it comes down to trust. And I think that I like a lot of what you've said in terms of, because it shows we just need to bring that balance. You cannot have the male being treated for his mental health issues, and we don't bring the female on board to make sure that she's also in that emotional place to assist.
Exactly. Because females are the back. Honestly, females are the backbone for all men. I don't care how we look at it. Females are our backbone, and we need them in whatever capacity. But when we know that we have a strong female behind us, it makes us know that we can accomplish anything. That's how I looked at it growing up.
And by this, I don't want people to go away thinking that we're dealing with just two genders here, because as we know, our society is now more open, and
Hmm.
you have other people who have their own genders who have decided, look, I'm non-binary, I'm transgender, I am lesbian, I am queer, I am whatever. And this is okay because at the end of the day, we're dealing with personalities,
Hmm.
we're dealing with emotions, and what we're dealing with is overall mental well-being. And I think that's important to understand that when we speak, we're including everyone who has the capacity to become mentally ill over issues.
Exactly, and that's exactly you drove home a lot of my points. That is exactly why a lot of people say that.
Yes, because we're dealing with Black mental health matters, and that includes everyone.
Exactly,
Everyone.
everyone, not everyone.
Yeah. Hi, and with that, I would like to thank our audience for tuning in and listening to Black Mental Health Matters today.
Thank you
Thank
all
you
for
all for
having me.
coming on. Dr. Claude, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. Thank y'all so much.